Government Act that has been proclaimed is the section to move the term of a councillor from 3 years to 4 years. And the only reason they did that was because they wanted to postpone the local government elections. And we heard on their platform a promise to have executive councils where council members would head committees in a similar manner to the Tobago House of Assembly model, where they would act as cabinet ministers, so to speak, in a model that provided an executive council and full-time councillors. We have no word on that, and it is very clear from the PNM's budget and their allocations to the Ministry of Local Government as well as to the various regional corporations that the government has no intention of creating executive councils. It means then that you lied to the population, that you came to campaign and fool the population to talk about executive councils, to talk about more efficient services, to talk about better roads when you yourselves are not providing material for simple things like road patching in the regional corporations. We have heard so many times from this PNM about local government reform, and yet whenever election finish, it seems as though reform is finished. To this date, there is no substantial progress in local government reform, and that has been touted as a solution for numerous problems within the communities. And it seems that the only aspect of the local government reform that this government is going full speed ahead with is property tax. It is my view that the PNM has been systematically undermining the regional corporations, depriving them of resources to make the case to justify bringing property tax. So they abandon the corporations, and you have overgrown lots. You have roads that are badly dilapidated, potholes, landslips. You have a state of where garbage is not being picked up, and you have dirty communities, really, real poor conditions in some of these areas. And the local government bodies are trying their best. But the truth is that when you stifle them like that, you now are trying to prove to us that you need property tax to fix this problem. We in the UNC continue to say that we do not support property tax being introduced at a time like this. So 2 years after the legislation has been asked, I asked the Minister of Local Government and I asked the Prime Minister, where is the reform? Where is the big budget that you promised in this year's allocation for a full year of reform and doing things differently? Where are the executive councils? Where are the secretaries, the Secretary for Infrastructure, the Secretary for Public Health, and so on? Where are the increases in employment? The only thing that we have heard from this budget, from the Minister of Local Government and the Minister of Finance, is the introduction of property tax. And while we remember the words of Dr. Keith Rowley, he said to us on the campaign trail, I'm going to read it for you. These are his words. He said, I have absolutely no doubt that as we transition through local government and bring about devolution, that we promised that the nation will see the benefits of setting out to do things differently. Local government is not something we dreamed up. It's something we have worked on as a nation for the longest while. Well, the only truth in that is that they have been working on it for the longest while. Since Hazel Manning was Minister of Local Government, they have been working on it. But the truth is we are not seeing things done differently. The only real change we had in local government was when the People's Partnership was in government and Kamla Persad-Bissessar as Prime Minister gave councillors offices, secretaries, provided tax breaks for vehicles because councillors ought to be mobile. These are some of the things that we saw introduced to make a difference in local government. But what we had was political will. And this PNM is lacking political will. What you had was more money being provided to regional corporations. You had the support of various ministries in providing the services and strengthening the services of regional corporations, whether it is social services, infrastructure, and what have you. One of the services that we believe that the local government would play a role in is making communities more secure. And I want to talk a little bit about that this morning with you as we face and we continue to battle the rise in crime situation. We remember community comfort patrols in our communities. We remember having more boots on the ground, joint army and police patrols. We remember there was a proposal to increase legal gun ownership for you, the law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, so that the bandits doesn't always have the advantage. We remember that we had a nationwide plan to restore and improve street lighting in your communities, making you safer, so that we could take back control of our streets. We indicated to the nation through our campaign and even afterwards as a policy in local government that we will use municipal police in the local government corporations to secure our children at primary and secondary schools, at the recreation ground, because we have seen children being gunned down on the recreation grounds. And we believe local government could play a role with the municipal police securing schools and recreation grounds. We believe that the municipal police should be expanded so that local government corporations could create jobs by employing more police officers, but you will have more boots on the ground. These jobs are desperately needed, but the safety and security is also needed. We want our citizens to be able to defend our homes. We support stand your ground laws to protect your home and your family. Our UNC councillors will support your request to secure your communities with gates or barriers, to restrict non-local traffics, to secure playgrounds and to enforce noise pollution laws, so that you can feel safer. There are communities, even in the St. Augustine constituency, who are going through the process of gating their communities, providing barriers to restrict persons from outside who come in to scope out, to jump your wall, and conduct home invasions and other criminal activities. And so we will support communities who wish to do this. We are saying scrap property tax. Stop this inheritance tax that they spoke about. It seems that because the opposition jumped the gun and talked about it, they have pulled back on it. But we are saying you should not pay more taxes at this time. Some of the things that regional corporations should be doing more if they have additional funding are, for instance, to clear vacant lots. You must have litter prevention wardens working in collaboration with the public health unit to remove derelict vehicles, to ensure vacant lots are cleared. You must have collaboration with the TNTech to ensure that street lighting is in place. So that way your communities are brighter, the communities are safer. There's something called the broken window theory, where when you see neglect in a community, you are more likely to invite negative elements. So what we have now is overgrown bushes on the side of the road, recreation grounds being poorly maintained, vacant lots growing up with bush. You have mini dumps, dumping sites all over the place. You have potholes and dilapidated road conditions. And so if the regional corporations get the support to improve communities by clearing vacant lots, working to get streetlights well operational, clearing the roads, making the communities bright, you will encourage positive activity, a sense of community pride. You will encourage NGOs and sporting organizations to have activities on their recreation grounds because the recreation grounds will be safer. And we are saying that local government play a role in making communities safer. What we have now is Dr. Keith Rowley, as Prime Minister of this country, chastising the Comfort Patrol. In the recent budget debate, the Prime Minister in his contribution was mocking the Community Comfort Patrol. And his words were, Comfort Patrol, Comfort Patrol, Comfort Patrol. Where? What is Comfort Patrol? He called it a failed program where the UNC pick up, in his words, Tom, Dick and Harry to drive a car through the neighborhood and call that a comfort patrol. What absolute nonsense. That is trivializing the work that was done under the People's Partnership Government. And in fact, in 2020, when the PNM won the election, Keith Rowley, as Prime Minister, reintroduced the Community Comfort Patrol. So the Prime Minister is making no sense. He is chastising his own self in a sensible program that provided 24-hour residential patrols that were in force. And this initiative was implemented by the UNC government, and the PNM, led by Dr. Keith Rowley, decided to keep the Community Comfort Patrol. And what it did was utilize the exact companies that were utilized under the previous UNC government. That is and it was retained under the Ministry of National Security. In 2014, the same patrol and the same neighborhoods and so on were then being done in 2020. So the Prime Minister in his budget contribution really made no sense. And I think what he was doing is trying to frighten the population, because his own government, after 8 years, has no solution for crime. What was the Community Comfort Patrol? It was a program by the Ministry of National Security where communities were engaged, and there was a joint initiative between the Ministry of National Security and the private network of security, private security network. So there is an official private security network commission, and they were working closely with the Ministry of National Security. So you had law enforcement officers and private security companies belonging to that network, registered with the Ministry of National Security in residential area, is in housing developments, to assist with treating both actual crime, the fear of crime, and preventing crime by making communities safer. So we are calling this morning on Dr. Keith Rowley, on the government, to tell us what is happening with local government reform. We have seen so many promises. We are saying use local government reform to make communities safer. We are asking you to desist from your bait and switch tactic. The promises you made in local government elections, you must make them happen. You promised executive councils. You promised more efficient services. And we are saying our young people, our recreation facilities, go hand in hand. So if local government has our recreation facilities in order, the lighting on the recreation facilities are there, both adults and young people will have the opportunity to be involved in positive activities, sporting activities, as opposed to getting involved in criminal activities. Where you have bright lights, the criminals don't like to lie in there. So if you have well-lit recreation grounds, well-lit communities, you will get more involvement. If you do not have pile-up of garbage, if you have regular removal of garbage, patching of potholes, you will have people feeling better about their communities, feeling safer. Women will feel safer to take public transport because areas are well lit. You don't have these vacant lots with bush and so on. So I'm asking the Prime Minister, it is time to put aside politics, make good of your word, make our communities safer. We must reduce the murders, the violence, and the criminal activities. We must ensure that our communities are safer. And one of the opportunities you have is through local government to provide more municipal police, to ensure that communities are well maintained, to ensure that our recreation grounds and our youths are happy together. And with that this morning, I want to thank you, and I want to hand over to my colleague, Senator David Nakhid.
Thank you for that very comprehensive, detailed, and very technical presentation, MP Ameen. I think the common thread that resonated with that presentation was that Keith Rowley is probably the biggest liar that we have seen in Trinidad and Tobago.
Once again.
everything that he says, his administration says and does, it's always a policy of deceit. And I would like to have this conversation. It's very necessary at this point in time, because we are in hell. Trinidad and Tobago is not heading towards hell. We are in hell. We just have to look at the papers. Everywhere there's crime, 2 killed in St. James, double murder in St. James. Here, 2 wounded, 2 killed. You pick up the Guardian, you'll see 4 were killed in Belmont. Cops burnt out. You know, we are faced with a situation where we are no longer heading, as we like to say, heading towards the abyss. We are in the abyss. And let's get that off the ground and let's realize that, and that's where we are. And the reason we are in that situation, and I said again, we have to always have a historical perspective. Huey P. Newton, who was a famous black activist, Afro-American activist, always says, think global, but act local. And when we look at that, we realize that this Rowley administration is probably an administration that has a propaganda machine akin to that of the South African apartheid regime, to that of the apartheid Zionist regime that we see now committing atrocities in Gaza. I am convinced that Prime Minister Rowley, in his absolute lust to retain power, has forgotten the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It is uncanny. It is uncanny that we are in this state where murders, quadruple murders, triple murders, double murders are the order of the day. And Prime Minister Rowley, all he does is obfuscate, deceive, lie. And I point you all, as we talk about historical perspectives, to a book written on what is happening in Gaza, a book by Richard Shambrook called A Policy of Deceit. And it speaks to the Balfour Declaration, and that from the inception how it was a deception on the people of Palestine. And it's the same. Rowley's 8-year administration has been policies of deceit. When we, the opposition, the loyal opposition, has pointed out at every turn where that deceit has led us to a path of criminality, wasted, squandermania, absolute corruption, what does Rowley and his minions do? They double down on that deceit. And I'll give you some examples. Now all of a sudden, when crime is the major burning topic in Trinidad and Tobago, as I stated before, all of a sudden we had Keith Christopher Rowley come into Parliament with deception, lies about the highway to Point Fortin, lies about it. We brought in Dr. Carson Charles, who spoke at length about it. We have admissions from former ministers about it. And Rowley doubled down because he feels he can do so with impunity. And as MP Ameen indicated, Rowley, the problem with a lie is sometimes you forget what you lied about. We saw that when he spoke about Wendell Motley in regards to the Sandals Resort. He completely forgot that he was on that committee. And that is indicative of this government. So when we who look on at events, and that's why I liken it to what we are seeing now in the news, in the wars in Ukraine, the wars on Gaza, we are seeing with our own eyes massacres being committed, and we are hearing a narrative totally unaligned with what we are seeing. It comes back to, who do you believe, me or your lying eyes? So when Keith Christopher Rowley tells us that the economy is in order, when Coleman tells us the economy is in order, 1 billion before Christmas, and then they have to come back a few days later and admit that that is not the case. When they tell us that they're going to meet with our opposition leader, Kamala Prasad-Bissaso, on crime, when everything is set up for that, until now Rowley has not allowed himself to meet. We even had Pastor Clive Dutton speaking about that yesterday. If you are concerned, as you said, as he stated, that now he's concerned, it has gone beyond the ridiculous. If he's so concerned about crime, the first order of business for Keith Christopher Rowley was to make sure that he will be present at those talks with Kamala Prasad Bisasa to solve crime, not send people who have been thrown out of courts in Miami for lying. You would be present, you would be there. This should be the order of the day. And I'll go into detail why we believe, as the opposition, Rowley has no intention of fixing the criminal situation in Trinidad and Tobago. Because as we've stated with our plans, it could be pretty much short-term fix and long-term fixes. But when you have a prime minister who in 8 years cut all metrics that are indicators of making sure that crime goes down. When you cut education, like he did with Gate, from 700 plus million to 300, 400 million. When you cut that, you are sending a message to those people who relied on education to get out of that cycle of poverty. You are telling them that you do not care about them. That is not the opposition saying that. Your own figures are telling us that. When you cut all the youth programs that the UNC had in place between 2010 and 2015, and we say it again and again, YTEP, MILAT, MIC programs, TechVoc programs. Do you know, MP Ameen, that we were turning out 6,000 graduates a year in some of these programs? Now the PNM is boasting about programs they had to revive because they know elections are coming. They are turning out 400 and 500 people per year, as opposed to 6,000. That is a message that you are sending with all the metrics that I've indicated, that you do not care to fix the criminal situation. All you are interested is making sure that you retain power. And that is why someone lies. You lie because you are afraid of people knowing the truth. That's why you lie. You lie. So all your policies, whether it be in education, sport. I give you the example of sport. When I mentioned in the Senate that they had only put 13 million in sport, which is a major driver in the disadvantaged communities, MP, I mean, major driver to make sure people go on the right path. I said 13 million. The Minister of Finance said no. They had 200 plus million. Not letting the people know that 200 of that million was dedicated towards infrastructure. So this PNM government is about putting up infrastructure, but no policies that can drive human resources and drive our people to a proper life where they can have sustainable, meaningful employment. CPEP and URP will not work to fix our criminal situation, to fix the criminality that is widespread and rampant in Trinidad and Tobago. As a matter of fact, I really did not know where to start looking at the newspapers today. Everywhere. And the PNM, you know, MP Ameen, you know, the PNM has a famous saying they like to bring up every chance they get, that the alternative to the PNM is chaos and confusion. It's the most fossilized, dated epithet that they can come up with, because what we have seen here is that the PNM is chaos and confusion. They are the epicenter of chaos and confusion. Everything that Rowley has touched in 8 years has gone awry. Whether it be Petrochin, whether it be Naikwan. And let's take a look at Naikwan. $120 million US was loaned to them. Now we see Comimbert, Minister of Finance, when asked about that, when asked about those preference shares that we have in Naikwan, what is his comment? He's staying in his lane, in his sector. So in other words, he as Minister of Finance asks a financial question, has no response, and he's not taken to task by the public of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is well reported. All of these things contribute to crime. When you ask the taxpayers, who's going to pay back for that 120 million? Those preference shares are basically useless now. It's a government that continues to lie and lie and lie. And we, the public of Trinidad and Tobago, we the citizens who continue to suffer. You know, MP Ameen spoke about the community patrols. But those community patrols clearly to Keith Christopher Rowley mean nothing. Because he doesn't have to worry about that. He has 24-hour detail, he and his family. But the people who benefit from such a program that we, the UNC, had, which they also continued, unless it's politically expedient for Keith Christopher Rowley, for him, he'll come and tell the public, they make no sense. His go-to is always that the UNC has been corrupt. But I'd like to look at that frontally. Keith Christopher Rowley, who now has introduced, and it's not by coincidence, has introduced all of a sudden, every time for election, he brings up subjects, some topic of corruption. 11 million was spent on a so-called commission of inquiry, MP Ameen, into this highway project. 11 million was spent. Do you know how many meetings were held? Not one. Not a chair was pulled, but 11 million was spent to discuss a project. By all accounts, people who were involved in it basically was sanctioned by the PNM themselves. So you have to ask yourself, why at this time, when crime is the major burning issue, with food security very close behind, because the two are very, very much interrelated. You have no food security, you're going to find a way to get your wife and daughter and son to eat. And this government, with their hard-headed selves, doesn't seem to understand that. If people do not have sustainable, meaningful jobs, they're going to look for it. As the youth men like to say in Trinidad and Tobago, they're going to look for it. And unfortunately, from what we are seeing, they're looking for it in their own communities, where black men are killing black men. And when I say black, I mean African, East Indian. It's in the poor, disadvantaged communities across Trinidad and Tobago, especially on the East-West corridor. And Keith Christopher Rowley has no answer, no solution to it. So he continues to always drop a red herring. He drops something always that he feels can distract us. But we are not going to be distracted. There are too many murders. I am thinking that the media should have, like they have on Al Jazeera, a count every day and the names of those who have been murdered. You cannot tell me, with over 4,300 murders taking place under Keith Christopher Rowley, he has not once addressed it in a meaningful manner, other than the normal rhetoric, political rhetoric, as MP Ameen said. I am fed up. I am this. We have to, instead of saying, what are your programs you have introduced in the communities that continue to slaughter each other? Let's call it what it is. It's not normal to see in a community of Belmont young men jumping out of a car and shooting 4 men dead. I do not understand. I say it again. Have we become so immune, so numb to the tragedies that we see on television that now we cannot have it related to our own life in Trinidad and Tobago? 4 men, also everybody saw that video, MP Ameen. 4 men slaughtered, young boys slaughtered. We don't know what's the reason. We don't have to know. All we can see is crime within the community. It doesn't affect Keith Christopher Rowley. He continues to play golf. He continues to tell the media in the most bullying of ways, don't come with me by that. And don't think that the people in the young men in the communities, they don't recognize and they don't see these things. So when Keith Christopher Rowley, when approached on the matter of Brent Thomas, when that man, that Trinbagonian citizen was abducted, until now there's no word on that. He said to the media, don't ask me about that. So said, so done. No one asked him about that. When Nelson Gate came up, by Faris Al-Rawi's account, the Attorney General, and I'm pointing out all these things to show you where the criminality begins in the PNM government. And I'll bring it down to this, MP Ameen. When you look at the papers today, you see what happened. It's not only physical safety we have to worry about in Trinidad and Tobago. We have to worry about things like this. The big TSTT leak. Do you know what happened, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago? Marvin Gonzalez, Minister of Public Utilities, when questioned on November 1st, and our MP, our Shadow Minister for Public Utilities, MP Barry Padarat, who is very present and very, you can say omnipresent in this situation. When he was questioned, MP Minister Gonzalez, on November 1st in Parliament, he lied, straight out lied. There is no way on November 1st he did not know that secretive, confidential information of our citizens, over 800,000 by all accounts, were leaked on the dark web. He came to Parliament and said, no problem. There was an attempt, and that all your information is safe, which has now proven to be a lie. This is a government that continues to lie. So now, everybody, before, we were thinking that we have to worry about our physical safety, people getting shut down in the road, blood on the streets. Now, because of this, everybody bottom in the road. It's not only Marvin Gonzalez bottom in the road, everybody bottom in the road. Everybody information outside there. You don't know. All of a sudden you can look in your account and your account empty. Because this government does not know how to protect and keep our citizens safe. And I want our people to know that. And we cannot keep looking at this government to keep us safe when in 8 years they have failed. So we might think, and I'll tell you something, when we look at this logically, and I want our people to really look at this logically, because this is very important. When somebody attacks, there's a cyber attack, they do that for money. It's ransom. Okay? They hold you to ransom. They do not release that information unless you have negotiated, and negotiations have failed. That's why. Why have they done this? They're looking for money. These people are professional crooks. So they would have been very much at home talking to the PNM, who are the most professional crooks that this Trinidad and Tobago has ever seen. So obviously something went awry, and they dumped all the information about our citizens. So now, as I said, everybody bottom in the road. Minister Gonzalez and the PNM now will have to come and explain to the people of Trinidad and Tobago why did Minister Gonzalez lie in the Parliament when questioned about this. And MP Padarat put out a brilliant statement today talking about the Joint Select Committee. He spoke about it. It's right here. And he said, the Princeton MPs further stated that TST must treat this matter with a sense of urgency to protect customers, and they cannot bury their heads in the sands. I'm paraphrasing. He called the government, who is a majority shareholder of TSTT, to provide strong leadership on this matter and ensure that international industry standards are met to stop further attacks, as well as to secure private and confidential information hosted by the service provider. Well, I would like to say to my dear colleague, MP Padarat, that to expect professional and an honest answer from this government, that on God's face we're not seeing. Or they're certainly not seeing. This government has failed again. Has failed and continued to fail. And you know, I spoke briefly to that historical perspective about how we view things. You know, and we find ourselves at this juncture. And that's why the theme of this press conference is where are we headed as a nation. And to know where we are headed, we have to know where we are. And if we take a look at where we are, we'll find ourselves almost in a surreal position, MP Ameen. Because we are looking at the news and we are seeing all these reports. And I know we are saying to ourselves, but if I am there, I will not let this happen. We can see that. We know we say that to ourselves. If I am there watching these massacres on television, I will do something about it. If I am there. We always say that. We talk about when we see what happened in the Holocaust, in the Second World War, when we see other massacres that happen in Bosnia or Herzegovina, we always say that if I was there, I would have done something. But we are here in Trinidad and Tobago, and there's slaughter happening around us in the communities. Absolute slaughter. There's no other word for it. We cannot but note that if we have that slaughter taking place in our communities, and we have a government unable or unwilling to deal with that slaughter, what is the solution left for the citizens? We are the opposition, can offer solutions like our opposition leader did, our political leader did. We bring all the solutions to the table. But it's up to the government, who according to this Westminster system, they have the resources and they have the say. And I want our citizens to know that. And they have to essentially hold this government to account. There's no way, and I call it uncanny, there's no way, I don't care how much of a PNM sycophant you are, that Rowley's well-being is more important to you than the well-being of your children or your family. If that is the case, something is wrong. There's no way that Rowley going on Gulf ships and traversing the world with his Gary Sobers, as useless as both of them are, there's no way that that can be more important than if your child has clothes or school books to go to school. They cut school feeding programs. They cut the book grant that they said now they were coming now to give before Christmas. That seems to be gone. This is a government that now has its back against the wall. And they see the only way out of it is to continue doubling down on the lies or bringing matters up that has already been expedited. And I'll go you one more. What happened to that investigation into DSS? We all remember SRP Kate. 55 million was brought in to look at UNC political operatives. 55 million. And when you look at it logically, can SRP Kate sit down with an attorney general in England and discuss the fate of political opponents like she did here in Trinidad and Tobago? SRP Kate, 55 million, sit down with the attorney general or whoever and discuss political opponents. In England, they will never. Can she go and sit down with Rishi Sunak to discuss political opponents from the Labour Party? It will never be allowed. But she came into Trinidad and Tobago and did exactly that. Well, we, the UNC, will not allow it. We are not allowing. We'll fight back against it. And we'll call this for what it is, a political witch hunt. A political witch hunt. And all of that is what feeds into the crime. Kid Rowley seems to have no problem finding money for anything that he can find or have to go against the opposition to make sure that he retains power. No money. 55 million here, 11 million here, 120 million US for Naikwan, 250 million NGC. But to find some millions to make sure we have programs in those disadvantaged communities where the slaughter continues unabated, he cannot find. To find money for school feeding programs or GATE or sporting programs, he cannot find. And I think it's time that the people of Trinidad and Tobago hold Keith Christopher Rowley to account for precisely that. And I know it seems like Groundhog Day, but it's exactly what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. Keith Christopher Rowley has failed the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So in closing, I would like to remind the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and I leave you with an example of what happened as I refer to our historical perspective. A Palestinian Christian priest, his name is Antonius Hanana, family Hanana. You know what he said, MP Ameen? He said if the Zionist apartheid regime leaves no Muslim in Palestine, I will say the Adhan, the call to prayer. A Palestinian Christian priest. He said if the Zionist apartheid regime bans the Adhan, the call to prayer, I will say the call for prayer. It shows you the solidarity that we need in Trinidad and Tobago from a global perspective. We have to be unified. We have to be together to go against a Keith Christopher Rowley regime that has oppressed the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that has made sure that our poor and disadvantaged people in the communities on the East-West corridor can never raise their head. We must hold him to account, and I ask the people of Trinidad and Tobago to join with us, the UNC, to join with Kamala Prasad-Bissessar in continuing to put Keith Christopher Rowley and this band of minions, corrupt minions, in the political cemetery. And I thank you very much for listening, and I turn you over to our MP Ameen for all questions.
All right, good. Still good morning. Doris Polo from CNC3. My first question to either one of you. The UNC has been calling for the Prime Minister to attend crime talks since he announced his intention and extended the invitation to the opposition. Considering the fact that he's maintained that he has set up, identified the 4 people that will be in attendance, which does not include himself, what is the UNC's position in the interest of the citizenry? Will the party be participating in these proposed crime talks?
The UNC is very committed to reducing crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago and making the country safe again. Dr. Rowley's postponement and delay in keeping this meeting with the opposition in an expeditious manner is a demonstration of how seriously he takes crime and violence. It appears that Dr. Rowley is so insulated from society, he's so detached from the reality of what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago, that he doesn't realize how urgent the situation is when we have double murders and triple murders almost every day on a weekly basis. He doesn't seem to find this urgent. The truth is, whether the suggestions come from the opposition or from stakeholders anywhere in society, the fact is, as a nation, we have to come together and unite on the situation with crime. It is very clear that Dr. Keith Rowley, Fitzgerald Hines, and PNM government does not have a handle on crime. It is very clear that they need ideas, that they need political will, and I am desperately pleading to them, wherever the ideas come from, even if it is from the opposition, the point is that the government and the opposition should unite and implement measures to reduce crime in the short term and have a medium and long-term plan to keep Trinidad and Tobago safe. So I am calling on Dr. Rowley. Is going to another country more important than keeping our citizens here safe? You are the head of the National Security Council. You, as the Prime Minister, you have a duty to keep our nation safe. And so the UNC remains committed to talks on national security for the sake of a safer Trinidad and Tobago.
So will we be attending the talks without the Prime Minister being part of the process?
Well, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, well, the thing is, I wonder, sometimes, this is my personal opinion, but sometimes I wonder if Keith Rowley being there will really make a difference. I have not seen the political will from him to make it happen. But the thing is, the UNC is the one we have been calling on the PNM, the government, to meet with us. We have sent suggestions to them in the past. We have presented and publicized our suggestions, and we remain committed. The leader of opposition provided the information to the Prime Minister, and it is for them to send a feedback. It is not just to sit down and talk. I think what the Prime Minister owes the country is an explanation as to when he is going to put measures in place to really urgently begin the reduction in crime.
I think the point is that, as MP Ameen said, the Prime Minister is the head of the National Security Council. His first mandate as Prime Minister, as a government, is to ensure the safety, the security of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. With all the slaughter that continues around us, of our young men, our young boys, if he cannot deign to attend a meeting, what does that tell you? Well, it tells us a lot. it shows us that Keith Christopher Rowley is only concerned about making sure that the PNM remains in power. And the squandermania that we see, the wastage, the corruption that we see from them, continues. It's quite clear. I stated at the beginning of my presentation, just look at the metrics. The facts do not lie. He has no interest at all. He keeps shifting the goalposts every time he speaks on the matter. He keeps shifting the goalposts. Well, we are right there. Our political leader is committed to making sure that our citizens remain safe. She's committed to that, and she will continue to engage the government. Despite whatever way they try to run and hide, she remains committed to making sure that we engage with them.
Dr. Rowley spoke about this week redoubling efforts to identify, hunt down criminals, disarm them. Then he proceeded to have high-level conversations with the heads of various arms of the national security agencies. But then we had a memo that was circulating showing that senior officers were going on leave from the police service. Mm-hmm. Does the UNC have any concerns about that? Because the TTPS, the police commissioner, did defend it. She said that officers would be burnt out because they've been working continuously for some time, and there was an assurance given that the operations of the TTPS will continue unaffected. Does the party have any concerns?
We in the UNC have been talking about issues affecting the police service for quite some time. We have spoken about increasing the strength of the police force, engaging the SRPs, incorporating them into the service. We have spoken about the conditions under which police officers work. Many of them are not issued proper bulletproof vests and other protective equipment. Some of them purchase outside to protect themselves and keep them safe. We also had concerns, and when we were in government, we would have put additional $1,000 towards every police officer's salary. We also would have taken steps to ensure that any police officer killed in the line of duty, that his family would be adequately compensated by giving $1 million. And any member of the protective services. I think the PNM has disbanded that. But I think those questions are really urgent questions for the Commissioner of Police to answer, because the public wants answers. We are already experiencing in every community where you ask for additional patrols, where they have shortages. They are out fighting crime, looking for criminals. It's difficult for them to continue the patrols, and they have complained about being short-staffed. And sending officers out on vacation, the person to explain that properly to our nation is the Commissioner of Police. And I am sure that she would find it in her time to give an explanation to the media, to the population. But in addition to that, there must be a longer-term solution. Your police officers are burnt out. They are facing mental health and physical health issues. What is your solution? Sending them on vacation is clearly a very short-term solution. And I look forward to hearing from the Commissioner. Tell us what is happening.
So she did in fact issue a statement yesterday, and what she said, that's where the officers were overworked. They've been working continuously, and so we have senior superintendents going on 773 days leave, and it's supposed to be staggered. But are there any thoughts about how that would impact the officers and their current contingent? Is the supply of 100 TTDF employees enough? Does the party have any thoughts on this current arrangement?
Well, again, that is a question for the Commissioner of Police to answer.
I concur. I think a matter like that, because all the facts are not out yet. We heard about the mental health issues and so. But I think we would be presumptuous to make any statements about what exactly has. I mean, we can come with all kind of conspiracy theories, but I think the Commissioner of Police is the one who should be asked about that.
Yeah. I mean, earlier you mentioned corporations that were somehow being starved of resources. Do you have any evidence of this?
Oh, certainly. Over the last 8 years, in fact, for the last 15 years, we have done a tracking. We have the research in the UNC where we can look at the trend in terms of the funding provided to each regional corporation over the years. prior to the UNC being in government, during the UNC's term in office, and in the 8 years since the PNM has come into government. The funding to regional corporations has been diminished every year, continuously, under the PNM. And what you have is critical areas. So, for example, Sandy Grande Regional Corporation has about, they have all the recreation grounds in their region. They have $75,000 to maintain all their recreation grounds. So it just gives you an idea that $75,000 might not even be enough to properly maintain one ground. And that $75,000 has to last them for the entire year. You have in Mayaro Regional Corporation where you have $12,000 for cemeteries to last them for the entire year. So think about how much money $12,000 could do in terms of improving the conditions in their cemeteries. And again, it comes back to the broken window theory, where you have dilapidated communities, dilapidated cemeteries, overgrown bushes. And we have seen in every region an undermining of the funding. What you have is monies being allocated and never released. So we call that suppression of funding. So they give you the impression we are giving you more this year. But by the end of the financial year, they do not ever release the full allocation. And we have evidence where we have regional corporations, chairmen and CEOs, where they requested the money on numerous occasions from the ministry, but it was never released to the corporation by the end of the financial year.
Can we get the statistics, the paperwork?
Certainly, we can provide you. We have done tables, we have done graphs, but the information is available publicly. Any person can go onto the Ministry of Finance's website, and you can look at the draft estimates on recurrent expenditure and the draft estimates for development programs. So don't just take our word for it. The information is publicly available. And in the Ministry of Finance documents, you will see where every year you have the amounts being consistently reduced. Even when there's a little uptick, it never gets up to what it was under the partnership government.
Yeah, just to be able to see, because if we're seeing it on the paperwork, but then you're saying the funds not being disbursed even though they're requested.
Yes, so that will be reflected in the revised estimates of the following year. Yes.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us. This morning we dealt with the serious issue of crime and criminality and the PNM's failure to make our country safe. We give you the commitment as the opposition in Trinidad and Tobago that we will continue to hold the government accountable, that we will continue to stand with you. And this morning, as we were coming into Port of Spain, the unions are on the promenade protesting. And I ask citizens everywhere, whether you are part of the union, part of an NGO, or just an ordinary citizen, it is time to make our voices heard. I encourage you to speak out, stand up together. We have to stand against this PNM government. We have to hold them accountable. We have to confront the crime and violence in our country and the ineptitude of the PNM, the total incompetence of the government to deal with crime. We thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to you joining us again.